Good afternoon, members. It's already the scheduled time and we've formed a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the Bills Committee on Stamp Duty Amendment Residential Properties Bill 2023. Please invite the officials to join us. Let us welcome from the administration Ms. Winnie Ho, Secretary for Housing, Ms. Rosanna Law, Permanent Secretary for Housing, Mr. Donald Ng, Deputy Secretary for Housing, Ms. Venice Choi, PAS for Housing, as well as Mr. Leung Kin Wah, Deputy Commissioner of Inland Revenue, Mr. Hong Wei Keung, Chief Assessor, and from the Department of Justice, Mr. Manuel Ng, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman. Now that all of us are here, I'd like to ask if we want to hold any public hearing, or should we invite written submissions to express the views on the bill instead? Members, do you have any particular views on this? Written submission. Okay, any objection to that? If not, Secretary, please note that we've agreed to invite from the public written submissions. I will first give the floor to the Secretary. Secretary, are you going to do the briefing for us? There is a PowerPoint presentation from Ms. Winnie Ho. Over to you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I will give a brief introduction. Now, for the Stamp Duty Amendment Residential Properties Bill 2023, it intends to amend Cap 117, the Stamp Duty Ordinance, to put into place all the demand-side management measures contained in PA 2023, and that includes shortening the application period of SSD from 3 years to 2 years and reducing the respective rates of buyer's stamp duty and new residential stamp duty by half from 15 to 7.5%, and to provide mechanism for suspension of payment of BSD of NRSD for incoming tenants' acquisition of residential property in Hong Kong. The government's housing policy is to ensure healthy and sustainable development of the property market, and we closely monitor the development of the market. The demand-side management measures were introduced in 2010, and now the situation is a bit different from what it was in the past. We have improved in demand and supply balance, and we believe there is room to adjust the DSMMs appropriately to ensure that buyers and incoming tenants can benefit from these policies. On the date of delivery of the policy address on the 25th of October 2023, the CE also made the Public Revenue Protection Stamp Duty No. 2 Order 2023 on the same day to give effect to these measures pending the commencement of the legislation, and the order will lapse on the 25th of October 2024. We look forward to the support of members so that the bill can be passed as early as possible. Now, the administration has consulted or given information to the Law Society as well as the Real Estate Authority, Agents Authority. The stakeholders in general support the adjustment measures and have already issued guidelines to the industry so that these measures can be implemented smoothly. I'd like to invite my colleague, Ms. Venice Choi, to walk us members through the proposals in the bill. Thank you. First, I'd like to give members the background for the DSM, because back then housing supply was tight and there was solid demand for property purchase. So the government introduced several rounds of demand-side management measures in 2010 to curb short-term speculation activities and to reduce external demand. Now, for DSMM still in force, we have the SSD, BSD, and NRSD. In the past Yeah, we have seen a substantial increase in interest rates, and various economies have shown moderate growth, and transactions of the local residential property market have declined with a downward adjustment of property prices. So the government believes that it is the right time to adjust the DSMMs. So the CEO announced in his 2023 policy address that the government will adjust the DSMMs. The application period of SSD will be shortened from 3 to 2 years, and a BSD and NRSD will be cut by half from 15 to 7.5%, and will introduce a stamp duty expansion arrangement for incoming talents acquisition of residential properties. All these measures came into effect on the 25th of October 2023. The first proposal is to shorten the application period of SSD. We believe we can reduce the financial burden on homeowners who need to sell their flats after the holding period of 2 years. And we can also boost market turnover of residential properties by releasing the locked-up housing supply, increase the liquidity of flats in the market. The second measure is to reduce BSD and NRSD by half from 15 to 7.5%. This will help alleviate the financial burden on Hong Kong permanent residents who have already owned residential properties in their acquisition of another residential property, and reduce the cost of non-Hong Kong permanent residents in their acquisition of residential properties. Take a residential property valued at $10 million as an example. The adjusted BSD and NRSD can help buyers to save $750,000 to $1.5 million in stamp duty. The third measure is the stamp duty suspension for incoming talents. Now, this has enhanced the stamp duty refund arrangement introduced last year. So from stamp duty refund mechanism, we now introduce a suspension mechanism. This will reduce the upfront cost for incoming talents to acquire a flat in Hong Kong, and this will help further attract and retain talents from around the world. I'd like to brief you on the suspension mechanism. For an eligible incoming talent who buys a residential flat in Hong Kong on or after the 25th of October this year, they may apply to the ILD for suspension of stamp duty payment in respect of BSC and the difference between NRSD and ad valorem stamp duty AVD at scale 2 rates, that is the specified amount. However, the talent still has to pay AVD at scale 2 rates to ILD. Take 10 million property, 1,000 properties example. An income talent had to pay $1.5 million before introduction of the bill. But with the bill, he will only have to pay $37,000 or $375,000 in stamp duty, and the rest is saved for him. The definition of eligible incoming talent are those permitted to stay in Hong Kong by virtue of being a person to whom a specified talent scheme applies as provided under Schedule 12 to the Stamp Duty Ordinance, and he must not be a beneficial owner of any other residential property in Hong Kong at the time of acquisition of the residential property. Once the application is approved by the ILD, a statutory charge will be constituted in favor of the collector of stamp revenue automatically by law, that is, a specified charge. The revenue amount of the specified charge is BST plus NRSD minus AVD at scale 2 rates. The specified charge is deemed to, by law, to take effect on the date of acquisition of the relevant property, and ILD will register an instrument denoting the charge at the land registry. Once the incoming talent becomes a Hong Kong PR, he can submit an application for waiver to ILD for waiving the relevant liabilities. Upon ILD's approval of the relevant application, a certificate of discharge will be issued. But if the incoming talent fails to become a Hong Kong PR within 9 years from the date when he is permitted to stay in Hong Kong under the designated talent admission scheme, and his liability to pay the specified amount has not been waived by RLD by then, or under specific triggering circumstances, he will be liable to pay the stamp duty concerned within 30 days. Otherwise, a late stamping penalty will apply. So what are the triggering circumstances? There are two. First, he has already sold the property before he becomes a Hong Kong PR, or adding of a name to the list of beneficial owners to the property. An eligible incoming tenant can only apply for suspension in respect of one residential property. However, the person may need to replace his property. In case the subject property or new property is one for replacing the only other property then owned by the eligible incoming tenant or the original property, he should first pay the BSD and NRSD in respect of the new property. Upon disposal of the original property within 12 months after the date of the assignment of the new property, he may, upon payment of any outstanding BSD and NRSD payable in respect of the original property, apply to IRD for refund of the specified amount and suspension of the same. This follows the existing refund arrangement for replacement of property by a Hong Kong PR. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the legislative timetable. The DSMMs took effect on the 25th of October 2023, and the Chief Executive made the Public Revenue Protection Stamp Duty No. 2 Order 2023 by exercising his statutory powers to give full effect of the law to this bill so long as the order remains in force. So the order gives full effect to the bill for a 4-month period starting from the effective date, and the government aims to have the bill passed by the Council before the order ceases to have effect on the 25th of February 2024. Thank you. I open the floor to members. So I will allow members 7 minutes each. Of course, you don't have to use up the time if you do not have more questions to ask. Mr. Tang Fei, Ms. Carmen Khan, Professor William Wong, and Mr. Edwin Wong, and members who intend to speak can continue to press the button to speak. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chair. I thank the administration for the briefing. Of course, and the move to cut tax is good news to the public, the middle class in particular, and teachers are in the middle class as well, so they're very excited to see the measures. But then you're going to cut the BSD and NRSD by half only. By half, and the BSD will, SSD will also be cut by half. The policy intent is very clear. That is to ensure the healthy development of the property market and to give priority to the housing needs of local residents. I'd like to know whether you have any mechanism to monitor the development of the property market with the adjusted DSMMs. Do you have any quantified measures to gauge the impact of the DSMMs? Now, for instance, even if prices are going to go up, it's not going to be beyond the affordability of our residents. And if prices plummet, it not be disastrous. And to give priority to the housing need of local residents, can I take it that there will be more first-time home buyers as a result of the adjustment? Will the administration monitor the different sectors of the residential property market? Now the market is falling. What will be the impact on the number of negative assets in Hong Kong? Will our banking sector be able to swallow this kind of drop in property prices? Now, theoretically speaking, locked up housing stock will be released. In the secondary market, there will be increased supply. Will you monitor the situation? Will you be any metrics because there can be implications on different segments of the market. Can you have any quantifiable indicators to look at the implications of the market? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Be it 2010 when we rolled out the so-called spicy measures or stamp duty measures, we took into account the market at the time. It was a low-interest environment, and there was a solid demand for properties, and there was also very little supply of housing. Now we have entered into an environment with high interest rates. The government has been rolling out housing, and the supply of housing has been stable, which has been able to satisfy the needs of buyers. We have been monitoring the transaction volumes and the trend of property price as well as the economic conditions. We will continue to monitor these indicators. Since the announcement of the policy address has been a month now, we have been looking at whether there's been an increase in the number of first-time home buyers. Well, it hasn't been the case where we see an increase or a significant increase of first-time home buyers yet. However, within a month's time, we have had 132 cases of applications for the suspension mechanism or arrangement. We understand there are many locals who would like to purchase homes. We want to keep the residential property prices stable. So, as Mr. Tang Fei said, we will continue to monitor the situation and we want to keep the prices stable. Next, Ms. Carmen Can. Thank you, Chair. I have quite a number of questions. You can speak for a second round if you like. Hong Kong needs talents as well as money. I see that in Annex 12 that there will be 12 talent admission schemes. These schemes are listed out in Schedule 12 of the bill. The policy address has confirmed that the CIES talent scheme will be rolled out and details will be announced soon. The investment threshold for CIES is $30 million. Also, the applicant will have to have a foreign passport and that the person will not be able to purchase properties here. I wonder if the administration will take into consideration of the CIES when you implement the suspension mechanism. Will you allow applicants of CIES to benefit from the suspension mechanism? I also wonder if the suspension arrangement will affect the popularity of CIES. My second question is about the refunding mechanism rolled out on the 19th of October 2022. That means the previous refund mechanism will expire on the 24th of October 2023. I wonder if you have relevant statistics concerning the number of applicants under the previous refund mechanism. My third question about the impact on banks. Perhaps I'll save the third question to the second round. Please give some time for the administration to respond to the first two questions. Ms. Winnie Ho. Thank you, Chair. Our measures are targeting talents. We want to attract talents to Hong Kong. We want them to settle in Hong Kong, and housing is key. So We will follow the talent admission schemes to decide whether the incoming talents will benefit from the measures. As for whether applicants under CIES will benefit from the suspension arrangement, I understand that the Financial and Treasury Bureau is considering this, and then details will be announced shortly. For transactions conducted before the 25th of October 2023, we will follow the previous refund mechanism. According to our figures, we have 8 applications. Professor William Wong. I understand the administration will roll out the suspension mechanism. This will attract talents to come to Hong Kong and increase their incentives to stay in Hong Kong. This will be essential to the I&T development of Hong Kong. For eligible incoming talents, do you impose requirements for them to stay in Hong Kong? For instance, do they have to stay in Hong Kong for a certain period of time every year in order to enjoy the suspension arrangement? This measure is to attract talents to come to work in Hong Kong. If talents, after they get the approval to come to Hong Kong, but if they cannot enjoy the suspension arrangement, then it will defeat the purpose of this measure. For talents who fail to become permanent residents of Hong Kong, will the Immigration Department inform the IRD to ensure that IRD will charge the relevant persons the adequate amount of tax? Also, for incoming talents who have become permanent residents, is there a limited period of time for them to apply for the certificate of discharge from the land registry? This is an important measure for the government to draw for talents. Will the government report to the LegCo periodically or regularly, for instance, say once every 6 months, on the progress of the suspension arrangement? Secretary. Professor Wong is right that this measure is rolled out to encourage talents to come to Hong Kong and become Hong Kong permanent residents. This is our goal. Normally, if you want to become a permanent resident here, you'll have to live here for 7 years. I understand that some talents will want to be here for some time and see if they can adapt to the environment before they decide to apply to become a PR. That's why we allow 9 years of time for incoming talents to make a decision. That is 7 years of stay plus 2 years of buffer period. Within this 9-year period, the talent concerned should have enough time to consider whether they would want to become a PR, and the Immigration Department will keep monitoring the list. And let's say after 9 years, the talent still does not become a PR, then IRD will ask the relevant talent to repay the tax within 30 days. Also, the question about the application for the certificate of discharge. As for the period for talents to apply for the certificate of discharge, well, there are certain triggering circumstances for the talent to apply for this certificate. For instance, when the talent sells the property and has to pay the tax, then the talent will have to apply for this certificate. Also, if the talent applies to become a PR, then he can also apply to get the certificate. Secretary, from what I understand from Professor Wong, let's say there are no triggering circumstances. What is the longest period of time allowed for the talents to apply for the certificate of discharge? Is there a deadline for them to make such application? I'll ask IRD to respond. According to our current law, There is no fixed period for the talent to apply for such certificate. As long as the talent concerned meets all the requirements and reach out to the IRD to apply for a certificate of discharge, we will accommodate the talent. Last question from Professor Wong is that whether the government will report to the LegCo regularly on the progress or development of the suspension mechanism. Thank you, Chair. We'd be happy to do so. As we continue to roll out the measure, we'll be able to get more information as to when we should come to the LegCo again to make a report. We will talk to the Secretariat. On the time limit for application of the certificate of discharge, as mentioned, within 9 years of time, the talent will have to apply for the certificate of discharge. If the talent does not do so, then he or she will not be able to enjoy the stamp duty benefits. So within 9 years of time, the talent will have to do so. Any follow-up questions? No. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Chair. I support the suspension mechanism. Last year, in the policy address, there was the proposed refund mechanism. And back then, I already proposed that a suspension mechanism would be more attractive than a refund mechanism. Back then, the administration told me that it would not be feasible. But 1 year has gone by, and now the administration has rolled out the suspension mechanism. The administration once mentioned that there will be an increase of administrative cost on IRD if it rolls out a suspension mechanism, and that there will be difficulties with chasing for the stamp duty repayment. I understand that was what you said back then. I want to know if there are any change of circumstances now. Also, are there any changes in policy that you will only have to chase the sellers for the stamp duties but not the buyers? Third question. I mentioned that there can be a charge and discharge system to ensure that people pay the stamp duties. The administration mentioned back then that there would be an increase in administrative costs. Now 5 years have gone by. I wonder what kind of measures you will put in place to minimize the administrative costs incurred. Fourth question. Under IRO Section 20B, there's a duty of withholding. Now that you're rolling out the suspension of payment of stamp duties, will you amend the Section 20B of IRO? When we had the discussion in 2022, we decided to roll out the refund mechanism instead. And back then, we were only starting to roll out measures to attract talents. After we had rolled out the refund mechanism, we have received views that we can enhance the relevant arrangement, and I thank the IRD for coming up with the idea of suspension arrangement. And we can make use of administrative measures or the charge and discharge system to make the whole arrangement work. In terms of administrative costs and the execution of the measure by the IRD, I'll invite the IRD to tell you more. Thank you, Chair. After the last legislative amendment exercise, we have been in touch with the Housing Bureau. On the question of cost effectiveness, when we decided to roll out the suspension mechanism, we came up with different proposals. And we decided to settle on the charge and discharge system because it entails a lower cost. IRD will be responsible for registering the certificate of charge with the land registry. And this will lower the amount of fee that the talent concerned will have to pay. We have been making assessment over the past few months, and we decide that the mechanism proposed is cost effective.
As regards Section 20D under the Inner Revenue Ordinance, we don't propose to amend that section in the bill because the current proposal to create a charge has given us sufficient security to weigh out the risks. So we do not have any withholding mechanism proposed for this measure. Any follow-up? I'll come back later. Ms. Carmen Khan, second round. You can have 7 minutes. Thank you, Chair. May I go to paragraph 14 of the brief? That is about the suspension mechanism. I'd like to know the impact on our banking sector. Let me declare interest. The organization I serve is a bank. Paragraph 14A and B in particular contains two concepts. First is the specified amount. There is a specified amount waived. So for a $10 million flat, the tax will be $370,000. So $1.13 million in tax, in stamp duty, is waived. So the specified amount here is $1.13 million. If the bank has priority over the under the first mortgage, then under the suspension mechanism, the collector of stamp revenue will have a statutory charge to make him secondary to the first mortgage. So that is about the principal and interest. So from my correspondence, from the correspondence of between the government and the legal advisor, I understand that the actual amount of principal and interest and also the cost for recovering the loan will be included. In other words, the mortgage cannot be an all-monies mortgage. As we all know, it's quite common for all monies mortgages to be set up. That is, for future remortgage, it will still enjoy the first priority. But according to here, it will be P plus I plus cost. Have you done any implications analysis? Will that make any change to the risk of banks? In footnote 4, we can see that the reserved amount will be the lower of A, principal plus interest plus cost. B in case of a negative equity situation, it will be the value of the property minus the specified amount. So B will be 8.87 million or $8.87 million. So the first priority is P plus I plus cost, and the second priority goes to the statutory charge in favor of the collector of stamp revenue. Should there be an negative equity, then the risk may be borne by the banks. Will that affect the percentage of mortgage to be approved by banks? And for discharge of the liability. Now, if there is no deadline for applying for a discharge, that may affect the value of the property, because for the first mortgage, because of the charge, now the property price may go up and down, and if the charge remains, the bank's interest may be affected. This is a rather technical issue. Can the administration respond first? Yes, I will invite the secretary to respond first. I'm sure there will be follow-up questions. Our PS, Ms. Law, has met with the banking sector. Perhaps I can ask Rosanna to explain. Thank you, Chair, and I thank Ms. Khan for giving us an opportunity to explain. In drafting the bill, we had discussed with the Hong Kong MA this issue. The primary charge is P plus interest, and I thank the legal advisor for reminding us that the cost should also be included. That will cap the amount of the first charge, and the second charge that is in favor of the government will be the amount waived. We understand that usually mortgages are all money's mortgages, but then the purpose of the policy is to encourage talents to own properties in Hong Kong so that they are more likely to stay here for good. Now, whether banks can continue to offer all money's mortgages, this is not within our consideration. We do not give priority to our charge because we understand that we must assess talents to be able to get mortgages, and therefore the government is willing to be secondary to the bank's mortgage. Now, if property prices fall and if the talent disposes of his flat quite early, the total amount or consideration he gets may not be able to cover the first mortgage. The government then has to bear the risk that we may not be able to recover our own statutory charge, but we are willing to bear this risk. With the assistance of the Hong Kong MA and the Hong Kong Association of Banks, we have met with over 100 representatives from the banking sector. Major banks have raised several issues, including this one, and after our explanation, they understood our rationale, and many banks expressed interest in this kind of mortgages. None of them has said that as a result of the statutory charge, they are going to say no to a mortgage application from incoming talents. Whether it be first mortgage by banks or secondary mortgage by developers, is quite common in the market already, so banks know our arrangements quite well. Thank you. Second round, Mr. Edmund Wong. I'd like to follow up on the administration's reply. The law hasn't changed. Last time we were told that it was very difficult to enforce the law. It was extremely difficult, etc. Without any change in the respective legislation, how come all of a sudden you can implement a suspension mechanism? Why is it that by creating a charge, all difficulties are now removed? Because without discharging without a certificate of discharge, it would be difficult for the property to be disposed of. I understand that this has nothing to do with the Inner Revenue Department, who is responsible for implementing the policies only. I understand the difficult position the ILD is in. And then the commissioner told us that the ILD is responsible for creating a charge. And we were told that huge administrative costs will be involved. Do you have an estimate as to the extra manpower you require for implementing the mechanism? Now, I've also got some new questions. When we considered the refund mechanism, I did say that when the eligible talent passed away in Hong Kong, will the charge or will the if the inheritor by means of transmission can enjoy the same arrangement? The answer I got was if the successor was a talent, then it would be okay. What if he is not a successor? Well, if an eligible incoming talent likes Hong Kong and if he subsequently passed away, I'd like to know whether his successor will enjoy the same suspension mechanism. Last year, we were told that a suspension mechanism would create or generate great demand in the market, and the situation is not the case. Now, with the suspension mechanism, I read from the media that many people were incentivized to buy properties. I'd like to know whether this policy will change after the demand has grown to a certain extent, because I want to know whether the government will backpedal and change the policy once again, that it will make it very hard for talents to adjust. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your question. How come there was not this system to create a statutory charge, and this time we can do it? Because after the passage of the last amendment bill, we have been in close liaison with the Housing Bureau. To prepare for the latest bill, we invited views from other departments, including the Department of Justice, the Buildings Department, as well as the Lands Registry and Lands Department. So we've got views from different experts, and we're quite confident that with this statutory charge system, we can make this suspension mechanism work. I apologize because for the last exercise, we did not consult as extensively experts from within the government. This time, we are quite confident that with a statutory charge, we'll be able to make the suspension mechanism work. Hopefully, we can improve our policy to draw for talents. Do you need extra manpower? The bill has only been in place for a month or so. So far, we've received 132 applications. We're able to cope with that for the time being. If in the future the number of applications rises substantially, we will see whether extra resources are required. Policy Bureau for the remaining questions. All right, I will first address the last question before my colleagues will comment on the other cases. What if a talent passed away subsequently?
In 2022, we implemented the refund mechanism. Over the past year, we have seen a number of interest rate hikes, and this has posed an impact to the housing market. Compared to 2021 September, home prices has dropped by about 10%. Transaction volume compared to the peak period has dropped from 6,000 to about 3,000. So we have seen changes in the circumstances over the past year. Like Mr. Tang said, we have been monitoring the situation and the trend. We hope to maintain a balance. So moving forward, we will continue to monitor the situation. As at today, given the import and export performance and market sentiment, as well as the market and economic conditions, we are adopting a holistic approach, and that's why we have come up with the change in policies. Also, we have got views that suspension mechanism will be more effective than a refund mechanism. As to how we will deal with talents who pass away during their stay in Hong Kong, I'll invite my colleague to tell you more. Ms. Rosanna Law. We drew reference from the practice when we rolled out the refund mechanism. This time around, under the suspension mechanism, an incoming talent will be deemed as a permanent resident or potential permanent resident. If unfortunately a talent passes away before he or she can become a PR, then the property remaining will be an asset or an estate of the talent deceased. All the costs incurred, including the stamp duties and the charges, will have to be paid before the successor can realize the property. We will follow the same approach for how we deal with a state of deceased persons in Hong Kong. That means if a talent unfortunately passes away, the charges will still have to be paid before the successor realizes the property. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. There's the AJLSP meeting in the other meeting room. The government has announced the relevant measures for some time now. You should be able to get an idea of the views or feedback from the relevant stakeholders, including the real estate sector as well as the banking sector. Well, I wasn't here just now because of the other meeting. Can you tell us again about the feedback of the market on the announced measures? Has the government been able to release the locked up stocks and boost the housing market? That's my first question. I have heard views that relaxing spicy measures is a good move. Some want a further relaxation of the so-called spicy measures. I understand that the government will have to take a prudent approach and observe the situation closely after it has announced these measures. If these measures keep changing, problems will arise. However, like what Mr. Edmund Wong said, will the government change its measures if it sees that home prices increase again? Will you raise stamp duty if you see a rise in home prices? This will make people skeptical about government's measures or government's move on implementing different policies. I think the government have to think twice before it rolls out new measures. The government should not recklessly implement new measures, and this is just my personal opinion. I want the government to tell me first about the feedback of the market after it has announced the measures. Have you been able to release the locked up stocks in the market and boosted the housing market? That's what I want to know. Thank you, Chair. Some members have asked similar questions. Secretary, please give a response in one go. Thank you, Chair. We have just announced these measures for a month, and the market needs time to digest the new measures. For home buyers or potential buyers, they'll have to think about what they want to do with the new measures. As mentioned, IRD has received 132 applications under the suspension mechanism. The feedback has been positive. There have been news reports that there are more potential home buyers now. I think we need more time to collect the statistics to see how people react to the new measures. I think Mr. Holden Chow has a point about the spicy measures. These spicy measures have an effect on different people, be it home buyers or sellers. We are facing a complex situation. We have to look at the trend of interest rates. We cannot be reckless. We have to take a prudent approach if we want to raise or drop the stamp duties. So we have carefully considered different factors, and we decided to reduce the BSD and NRSD by half. Of course, we'll be able to attract more talents if we further drop the stamp duties. On the other hand, we have to take into consideration the needs of local home buyers. There may be people who want to buy another property for their family, and we have to take all these needs into consideration in a prudent manner. We will not make any policy decisions in a reckless manner. Any follow-up questions? Just one more point. I support the relaxation of the spicy measures, and I thank the government for rolling out these new initiatives. These measures will help release the locked up stocks in the market. I understand that you have taken a prudent approach. You mentioned that you have received some 132 applications after the suspension mechanism was announced. Well, you should keep up the effort. However, moving forward, you have to be very careful when you decide whether to raise and drop the tax stamp duties. You don't want to give people the impression that you are randomly increasing or dropping the stamp duties. Just one personal comment. That's all. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Carmen Khan for the third round. Chair, I have a number of questions on. I agree with what the government said in Annex E. The suspension mechanism will be able to help lower the cost of buying a property for incoming talents, and in the long run, it will help talent stay in Hong Kong. I want to declare interest here. I am involved in the Top Talent Pass Scheme project. Going back to Section 14A, take a $10 million property as an example. $1.13 million is all that the buyer has to pay. Footnote 4 mentions that if the relevant person does not pay the stamp duty, then the second charge say if the stamp duty expires for 2 months or 10 months, then the $1.13 million may go up to $10 million as a penalty or a fine. I wonder if this would be counted as the second charge. Also, according to the bill, the incoming talent will have to apply for a certificate of discharge with the IRD. Understand that the talent will be given 9 years to make such application. Can you make the liability be discharged automatically after 9 years of stay of the talent? Or when you draft the bill, can you include it in your provision that the liability will be discharged automatically after 9 years? This will have to do with the benefits of the bank. Another question is to follow up on the legal issues. For an eligible incoming talent, he can solely or jointly purchase a property with a Hong Kong PR or a closely related person. According to the administration's reply, the idea is that the administration is already treating the talent concerned as a PR. That's why the talent can purchase a property with a non-relative. I think the sector will have to be clear about this. Who will be added to the name for the home titles? As mentioned, if the talent passes away in Hong Kong, then the stamp duties will still have to be paid. Triggering circumstances include the case in which the talent is no longer treated as a beneficial owner. There are different circumstances under which a talent is no longer be treated as a beneficial owner, including that the talent passes away. Under such circumstances, the talent will still have to pay the stamp duty. Since tenants will be able to buy a property with another person, including a closely related person, the sector will have to be clear whose name to be included in the agreement. Also, will you require the tenant to be a joint tenant when a tenant purchases a property? A closely related person includes siblings, not just parents or spouses. For siblings, we refer them as tenants in common. And if the tenant passes away, the situation will be complicated. And again, the stamp duties will have to be paid. We want to minimize the situations where there are triggering circumstances.
局長。
好啊，或者我先
Thank you. Two major areas, Secretary. I will take the first part of the question as regards different types of ownership. Let's see if the PS can explain later. Regarding late stamp duty, payment of stamp duty. Now, if the stamp duty is not paid within 30 days, then a fine is payable. So if it's not exceeding 1 month, the amount will be double. If it is between 1 month and 2 months, 4 times the specified amount, and beyond that period, 10 times. The liability is on the person himself. And PS, can you explain about the different types of ownership? Yes, this clarification is important. So the stamp duty is 1.13 million. So the liability is on the person himself, not on the property. The former may go bankrupt, but it will not impact on the property. So why isn't it an automatic waiver? Why does the applicant, why does the tenant have to make application? Yes, it depends on the circumstances of the case. Let me put it this way. In our discussion, we believe that for the incoming tenant, if he has such a large amount of charge on his property after he has become a Hong Kong PR, he should be very motivated to apply for a discharge. Whether we can give him a reminder upon his becoming a Hong Kong PR, yes, that can be considered. But in our discussion, our view was that the amount was quite substantial. The person concerned should be motivated to make the application himself. And whether the property can be owned together with another tenant or with a Hong Kong PR or a near relative. Now, we regard the tenant as a Hong Kong PR. He is deemed to be a Hong Kong PR. So his situation will not be worse off than another Hong Kong PR. So if he owns the property together with an Hong Kong PR, if the latter is not required to pay the tax, and we should not require the tenant to pay it. And as for owning the property together with his near relative, it can be a dependent, it can be a sibling or a parent or a spouse. Will we require all ownership or all terms to be a joint tenant? Well, when there are two co-owners, whether they want to acquire the property as joint owners, there are other considerations. And in the case of one of the owners having passed away, then the case will be dealt with using our estate legislation. And so the estate will be the amount after deducting the charge. Mr. Lam Sen Keung. Now, whether the measures are effective or not, I believe the government will know. My friends think that the policy is a bit weak. Now, we have already approved 10,000 applications coming in as talents, and we're talking quite a large demand for housing, be it rental or owner-occupied properties. And the administration is worried that if the policy is too lax, then there will be too much demand. I don't think that would be the case. Some talents cannot bring along their money to Hong Kong if they only get $40,000 a month. Then it is impossible for them to buy a flat. Perhaps you should discuss with the mainland authorities to allow mainland incoming talents to bring along money to Hong Kong to acquire properties. Honestly speaking, I think the adjustments are too mild. Can the administration tell us whether it is because of its worry for sudden increase in demand that it is not willing to go further? Secretary. Now, BSD and NRSD are cut by half, respectively, and we also introduce a suspension policy. I don't consider the measures too mild. Perhaps we in politics have a wider perspective. We understand that there are different demands in society, and there are strong calls to allow Hong Kong residents to become homeowners. It's true that property prices have fallen, but to many young people who aspire to be homeowners, the prices are still quite substantial. So we use this. We propose to cut the duty by half. We believe this is appropriate. You can see the property market in its current situation. We wanted to develop in a stable and healthy manner. So we've already received 132 applications under the suspension mechanism. This is not so bad. As for bringing the constraints on bringing money to Hong Kong, now the scheme applies to talents from all over the world. Mr. Lam is asking whether talents from the mainland can have special allowance. When it comes to bringing money into Hong Kong, we can reflect this view to the FSTB. Thank you. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you. Of course, from a refund mechanism to a suspension mechanism, I think this is a good idea. This can help incoming talents to take roots in Hong Kong, so we should support the policy. Well, what if they buy properties for renting out instead for self-occupation? Should they be given the same favorable treatment? And according to the administration, these incoming talents are deemed to be Hong Kong PR, and they should be treated in the same way as other Hong Kong PR. Hopefully, they can feel welcome here and they're willing to stay for good in Hong Kong. I do understand this view of the government. Now, for NRSD, in fact, even for Hong Kong PR, the amount is quite substantial and the financial burden is considerable. For Hong Kong PR, if you're talking about standard stamp duty, they can pay up at once. They have to pay up at once. But for incoming Now for the incoming talents, they can wait for 9 months. No. They have to pay the rate, the ad valorem rate scale to at once too. All right, that's better. And as for the charge is on the property itself. The talent has up to 9 years to consider whether he wants to pay that amount or not. So will the charge accrue any interest? Because 9 years down the road, there is inflation, and if the amount is paid only 9 years afterwards, then the amount in real terms is smaller than what it would be in the beginning. Secretary, yes, Mr. Kwok is correct when it comes to renting out the property. As explained by the PS, these incoming talents should be deemed as Hong Kong PRs. A Hong Kong PR can rent out his newly acquired property, so the same treatment will be accorded to an incoming talent. When it comes to the ad valorem rate at scale 2, again, the incoming talent has to pay it just the same as Hong Kong PR in Hong Kong. It's just that the difference is subject to the suspension mechanism. Now, what about the interest? Yes, because 9 years down the road, he may have to pay it if he doesn't become a Hong Kong PR. Now, for clarity and expediency's sake, because the interest rate may go up and down, so for clarity's sake, we will not take into account interest that may be accrued from the amount. Now, if he eventually becomes a Hong Kong PR, of course it's okay if you do not charge him any interest. If he subsequently or eventually doesn't become a Hong Kong PR, then you shouldn't be that generous. You should calculate the full interest incurred or accrued during the period. Well, we want the system to be clear and user-friendly. So for both cases, we do not charge any interest on the charge. P.S. I understand Mr. Kwok's view. The system is devised to be user-friendly and predictable. Now, I say this for the third time today. We hope that these incoming talents can become Hong Kong PR and take roots in Hong Kong. We don't envisage too many of these people not finally becoming Hong Kong PR in Hong Kong, and therefore we give them a buffer of 2 years. The whole mechanism has evolved from the refund mechanism. Now, under the refund mechanism, the government's refund will not include any interest accrued during the period. And this time, we have not decided to add any interest to the charge. That's fair. Mr. Edmund Wong, the third time. Thank you. I asked the administration whether they were going to adjust the policy again should there be a sudden increase in demand. According to the administration, they will make this a housing policy, and as Mr. Holden Chow said, the policy should not be adjusted rashly or lightly, because even the council, not to mention potential incoming talents, will be scared off by your sudden change in policy. Now, I fully understand that the Inland Revenue is just an executive department. It's fine. And for the first month after the introduction of the mechanism, we have 132 applications already. I'm worried whether the IRD has enough manpower. Do shout out, IRD, if you need to have extra hands to help. The third question, I must direct this to the Housing Bureau, is a question on your policy. Now, if the successor of the estate doesn't apply for a waiver, and if he doesn't dispose of the property and continues to rent out the property or occupy it himself, the beneficial owner hasn't changed by means of transmission. Will the government take the initiative to recover the amount? That is the gap in the stamp duty.
Secretary, I thank Mr. Wong for the questions. I will continue to monitor the manpower situation of the relevant bureaus and departments. I'm glad that you said if needed, we can always come to the LegCo to apply for funding. IRD. I thank Mr. Wong for the questions too. If a talent passes away, then within 30 days, the successor of the deceased talent's estate will have to pay the stamp duties within 30 days. What if the executor of the estate does not approach us? We are now talking with the immigration department to come up with a system to exchange information about incoming talents. One of the points we discussed is what Mr. Wong is concerned about. We have talked about situations in which incoming talents pass away in Hong Kong. We'll work with the immigration department to obtain information from the immigration department so that we can take actions. Thank you. Mr. Dennis Leung, Chair. The government tries to draw for talents and retain talents. That's why it switched the refund mechanism into the suspension mechanism. I think this move will help the incoming talents settle in Hong Kong in the long run. Some members mentioned about property transactions. Such transactions is complicated. After a person buys a property and resells a property, then a third party of buyer or sellers may be involved. Understand that a certificate of charge will be registered with the land registry. From what I understand, the charge will be registered with the property but not with the person. How will the IRD be able to chase the relevant person for the stamp duties if a property is resold by an incoming talent, and if the incoming talent has not paid the stamp duty when he does so, then the buyer will find that the stamp duties is not paid. How will the government deal with such situations? I have come across a case like this. A charge was not able to be discharged for a long time, and the company concerned was faced with a very complicated situation, and the property concerned was not able to be resold till now. So how will you chase for the unpaid or outstanding stamp duties? And at the same time, the law firms involved will be clear about the procedures. Say a buyer buys a property from an incoming tenant and he finds out that there is a charge that has yet to be discharged. You'll have to explain to the public about the procedure. Problems may arise if you do not make clear the procedures. You have to make sure that the IRD as well as the law firms involved as well as general members of the public know how to deal with such situations. Secretary, I want to make it clear that we only chase for outstanding stamp duties from a person who does not pay the stamp duty. Ms. Rosanna Law, I thank Chair for giving me the opportunity to make this clear. Normally, a transaction involves a buyer and a seller, as well as estate agents and a lawyer or lawyers from both parties that help deal with the transactions. If there is mortgage involved, banks may be involved as well. On the day when the policy address was announced, I met with the Estate Agents Authority as well as the Law Society of Hong Kong and the Banking Association. I explained to these three parties that in case such a charge is involved in a property transaction, then we'll have to go back to the land registry. The land registry's record will show whether there's a charge entailed in the property. Then the buyer can make the decision accordingly. Also, when an incoming tenant buys a property, a charge is incurred, and we give a template of the certificate of charge to the Law Society. We want to make the wording standard on the certificate so that lawyers will immediately be able to identify such a certificate of charge. For lawyers of the prospective buyers, when they identify such a certificate of charge, there are two things that the lawyer can do. First, the lawyer can advise his client that there is such a certificate of charge and ask the buyer if he still wants to proceed with the transaction. Secondly, the lawyer will have to advise the buyer if he wants to wait until the charge is settled to proceed with the transaction. That's what a lawyer may choose to do. If the transaction proceeds, then the buyer and seller should be clear about what to do with the charge. For both real estate agents and lawyers, we are happy to provide more information about the relevant procedures. We'd be happy to do more explanations. Chair, I want to share a special case. Say, the buyer knows that the incoming tenant would pay the charge, but in the end, if the tenant does not or fails to pay the charge, then I understand the government will chase the incoming tenant for the stamp duties. However, the charge is still there. If you do not cancel or discharge the charge, then there will be an impact on the prospective buyer. How can you offer more protection to the prospective buyer. Say an incoming talent fails to fulfill his promise and fails to pay the stamp duty. What will the government do to protect the prospective buyers? Ms. Law. We have to talk to the real estate agents, and we talked to the law society. We gave textual explanations to the two organizations, and we asked them to distribute the explanations to their members because we want the relevant sectors to be clear about the procedure. In circumstances mentioned by Mr. Leung, we want the lawyer to advise the client properly. Say an incoming talent promises to settle all the charges before proceeding with the transactions. I believe that some form of legal documents will have to be signed. Otherwise, the buyer may have the legal rights to chase the incoming talent for the payment. I think it is the real estate agents who have to work on this. Ms. Carmen Can will speak for the fourth round. You have already spoken for 25 minutes in your first 3 rounds, so please watch the time. Thank you, Chair. The government's paper doesn't mention a lot about the triggering circumstances, so I'd like the administration to elaborate on the triggering circumstances. I understand that the Housing Bureau is in charge of the demand-side management measures. A lot of talents have been admitted through the Top Talent Pass scheme. I understand that the measure took effect on the 25th of October 2023, and the measure will remain effective. I think the government has to make it clear that it's not the case that incoming talents will be given 9 years to purchase a property. Let's say an incoming talent gets the permission of stay in Hong Kong. Does that mean the talent will be given 9 years to purchase a property? Will the suspension mechanism be cancelled at some point? Ms. Winnie Ho. On the question about triggering circumstances, I'll ask the Principal Assistant Secretary to elaborate. And the other question, Ms. Rosanna Law will respond. Ms. Law. Under the current suspension mechanism, an incoming talent can purchase a property in Hong Kong and become a PR. If there is a change in policy at some point and the incoming talent has failed to buy a property, well, the incoming talent won't be able to enjoy the benefits under the suspension mechanism then. Normally, an incoming talent can become a PR after staying in Hong Kong continuously for 7 years. Perhaps the incoming talent had started to stay in Hong Kong before the purchase of the property. If an incoming talent had already stayed in Hong Kong for 7 years continuously before purchasing a property, then the incoming talent won't have to wait for 7 years. And it's not the case that we are allowing any incoming talents 9 years of time to buy a property. As mentioned by some members, It's not desirable for the government to keep changing its policies, but still, 9 years is a long period of time. There may be a change in policy at some point.
What about the triggering circumstances? Yes? PAS, please. Members may want to refer to para 14D of our electrical brief. We mentioned the triggering circumstances. Please refer to footnote 5 on page 6 of the brief. So what are the triggering circumstances? The first is on any date before the deadline for waiver, if the tenant buyer or each of the tenant co-buyers ceases to be a beneficial owner of the subject property, or a person other than one closely related to the buyer of all of the remaining co-buyers becomes a beneficiary owner of the subject property. In other words, if they have sold, if he or they have sold the property. And the second is as a deadline of waiver in case where no liability has been waived by the collector. That is, it has been sold to a near relative who is not incoming talent. The second case is no liability has been waived by the collector in respect of the specified amount. I'd like to ask about the second part of A. Does that mean that the incoming talent can transfer the property to one closely related to him during the 9-year period? Is that allowed? Here it says to one other than one closely related to the buyer. The definition of one who is closely related is very wide, including siblings, whether or not they are dependents. As far as I know, dependents would only include children and parents. We're going to adopt the same definition for this, because my concern is if I am an incoming tenant, if I can transfer the property to a sibling who is neither an incoming talent nor a Hong Kong PR. If that is allowed, I'm worried. P.S. In such a transaction, the talent may get married, and we allow the talent to add one who is closely related to him to become a beneficial owner of the subject property. We had the same arrangement under the refund mechanism, because an incoming talent may get married after buying a property, and he may want to add the name of his wife to the list of beneficial owner. But if we are talking about the transfer of the property to one who is closely related to him, and that is the tenant is no longer a beneficial owner of the subject property, that is not allowed, then the triggering circumstance A will apply. The director will ask the amount to be returned within 7 days. All right, within 30 days. All right, it's my turn. The PS and the secretary have stressed time again that incoming talents are deemed to be Hong Kong PR. But in my discussion, as a member of the Hong Kong Association of Banking, remortgage is not allowed. Should there be a remortgage obtained, then the priority will be after the government. Now, but this is allowed for a Hong Kong PR. So I'd like to ask, how come under this mechanism you do not allow a remortgage? It's not that I have any view on this, but it's just that you've been saying that the incoming talent is deemed to be a Hong Kong PR, but he is not entitled to getting a remortgage. Well, the PS was responsible for the briefing to Hong Kong Association of Banks, so I would defer to the PS. Yes, there was exchange of views with the banking sector. We have to strike a balance. The measure carries some risk to the government, and that is when it has the bank, if the property has been recovered by the bank for auction, then of course the bank will enjoy primary, will have first priority, and the government may not be able to recover the full charge. So we need to protect the interests of the government. We have to protect what is due to the government. When it comes to remortgage, banks have various measures to attract new clients. They may offer lots of conditions or offers to attract clients. But we only talk about 7 years here. You can become a Hong Kong PR in 7 years. And the no repayment period is usually for 2 years in ordinary mortgages. There may be incoming talents who would like to seek a mortgage, but we want the mechanism to be simple. Hopefully, within the 9 years, there won't be too many financial activities involved. I understood that the representatives from the banking sector smiled knowingly. So we want to apply a charge, and hopefully we can allow or facilitate the incoming talent to obtain a mortgage. Other than that, we want things to remain simple. If the Banking Association has any submission to the Bills Committee, we'll see how we can explain this arrangement clearer. According to Mr. Kok Wai Keung, these people do not have to pay any interest. So remortgage is beneficial to incoming talents. So it is not that all the conditions are favorable to incoming talents. They suffer some disadvantage as well. All right. Since we have completed our discussion on the policy aspect, we can start our cross-by-cross scrutiny. We are going to use the Chinese version as the basis of our scrutiny, and the legal advisor will use the English version to assist. May I refer members to CB 1022/2023-04 to facilitate our discussion. And members, if you would like to quote a particular clause, please refer to the page number. Yes. Ms. Choi, can you please introduce the paper to us? Yes. The long title. It sets out the scope and the objective of the bill. It is to amend the stamp duty ordinance to implement the measures announced in the policy address on changing the DSMM first to shorten period of applicable period from 3 to 2 years and to lower the flat rate of ad valorem stamp duty payable on such instruments from 15 to 7.5% and to introduce the suspension mechanism. Clause 1, short title and commencement. Hang on. Please pause after Clause 1. The legal advisor would like to seek a clarification. Yes, please. That is Clause 1(2) of the bill, and that is the commencement date of the bill. Please note that the commencement date of the bill and also the commencement time for the measures we have written to the administration to seek clarification. Please refer to paper CB 11022/2023-02. We have got the administration's reply, CB 11049/2023-01. Now, for the new measures, including the suspension mechanism, shortening the application period, and also reduction of BSD, and also the NRSD. So transaction that took place between 00 hours to 11 a.m. of the 25th of October will be included. So the measures here or the policy here have retrospective effect. Members may want to decide whether this is acceptable. Any supplement, please, to enhance our understanding. Please allow me to say a few words. In considering the commencement or effective date, we have to take into account that the bill started to take effect at the time when the PA was delivered. But then it would be difficult to ascertain the exact time when the contract was signed. Now, the whole purpose is to encourage incoming talents to acquire properties in Hong Kong, so we can be a bit lenient. So all transactions made in between 00 hours and ending at 11 a.m. on the 25th of October should be eligible. Ms. Khan, does that mean that amendment, a CSA will be introduced on the commencement? Would there be the need to introduce CSA, please? D of J? No, the clause has already reflected the policy intent. Legal advisor, can you please confirm? Because as it is, the bill says 11 a.m. on the 25th of October 2023. Will CSA be needed? Thank you. Now, the fact that the policy carries retrospective effect can be seen in the bill itself. May I refer members to paragraph 5 of the administration's reply? Paragraph 5A mentions 29 DJ1 and B. Section 12, adding new section 29 DA 2A. That is about the commencement date of the suspension mechanism. The old mechanism would only apply to transactions executed before the 25th of October. And for 29 DM, it says transactions on or after, or agreements signed on or after the 25th of October. That means signed from 00 hours all the transactions made after 00 hours will be included. All right, that is covered in a later clause. Yes? Ms. Choi, can you please continue? Thank you. Clause 2 sets out the amendment to stamp duty amendments and is set out in sections 3 to 16 as a result of the suspension mechanism. Consequential amendments to the stamp duty ordinance is required. And in section 12, we have got 29 DM and 29 DF. And there is also relevant amendments to reflect the changes in the stamp duty. May I refer members to page 1 of the markup copy. Section 2 amends the definition of stamp because we have added the situation of remission, suspension, or waiver of stamp duty.
Hold on. Let's see if members have any questions. If not, you may continue. Thank you. Please go to page 4 of the markup copy. Section 5C is added. It sets out the recovery period of the specified amount under the suspension mechanism. For Section 4, bracket 5, it says that the recovery of any stamp duty with respect to any instrument should not be carried out more than 6 years from the expiration of the time. Therefore, we have to add in the new subsection 5C to stipulate the recovery period. That is, the recovery of the specified amount may not be brought up more than 6 years after the day on which the liability in respect of the specified amount ceases to be suspended. According to 29DN bracket 5D and 8A, they are provisions in relation to the waiver of liability. Are there any questions in relation to the adding or the addition of subsection 5C? Now we come to clause 5. Please refer to page 7 of the markup copy. According to section 15, subsection 2, subject to subsection 3, no instrument chargeable with stamp duty shall be acted upon, filed, or registered by any public officer or body corporate unless such instrument is duly stamped. We're adding in subsection AAA, stating that an instrument and amount of liability of stamp duty of which has been suspended can be filed or registered by public officer. In other words, even if the instrument has not been stamped, the incoming talent can still register with the land registry to purchase the property concerned. Now we come to clause 6. It amends part 3, section 6. Please refer to page 7 of the markup copy. We're adding in a suspension mechanism, so we have to amend Division 6A about returning stamp duty. And we are now calling it stamp duty arrangement. Yes, please carry on. Now we come to clause 7. Please refer to page 8 of the markup copy. After we have introduced the suspension mechanism, the original provisions concerning the old mechanism will go under Division 2. And now the provisions for the new mechanism will fall under Part 3A, Division 6A. This includes Section 29 DHA, setting out the provisions of Part 2 and Part 3. And we have included titles for easy reading. For Section 29 DHA, the 4 provisions under it were set out under 29 DJ to Section 2 to 8, which concerns the original mechanism. Ms. Carmen Khan, can the administration explain Section 29 DHA, subsection 4, that is page 8 of the markup copy? There are A and B under subsection 4 of Section 29 DHA. Ms. Choi, please. Some of the agreements may not be performed or fail to be performed. So under Section 29 DHA subsection 4, we set out the situations under which the agreement cannot be performed or considered to be unperformed. This is an interpretation. This is from the original refund mechanism. The wording is the same. Please carry on. Now we come to Clause 8 of the bill. Please refer to page 9 of the markup copy. Clause 8 amends Section 29 DI, setting out that the interpretation under 29 DI will only be applicable to Subdivision 2. Clause 9 of the bill, please refer to page 10 to 14 of the markup copy. We'll cover page 10 to 14 and then we will wrap up the meeting today. Then we'll proceed in the next meeting. Yes, Ms. Choi. Yes, Ms. Carmen Khan. May I ask about the interpretation? You told me that there is the interpretation under Section 29 DI. For instance, can you explain a little bit more about the interpretation of co-buyer? Under co-buyer, there is the applicant. Who are the applicants? Who fall under the definition of the applicant? Can you go a bit more slowly here, please? Ms. Choi. There is the definition for co-buyer, and under it, there is the applicant. The interpretations under Section 29 DI are from the original refund mechanism. Perhaps I can explain what it means by co-buyer here. A co-buyer means according to Section 29 DJ, they are the eligible incoming talents who are eligible to apply for refund of stamp duties under the original refund mechanism. And they include 1, the applicants, that is the incoming talent. And according to Section 29 DJ 1 and 2, they also include any other person who jointly with the applicant. For instance, if the incoming talent purchases a property with a closely related person, then the closely related person will be considered as a co-buyer as well. Under the new suspension mechanism, there are different interpretations as well. If Ms. Carmen Khan is interested, I can elaborate on those interpretations when we come to that part of the bill. Chair, this is actually covered in the administration's reply in relation to the question about refund mechanism. That is the differences between the refund mechanism and the suspension mechanism. Perhaps Ms. Choi can tell us more about what it means by co-buy when we come to that part of the bill under the new mechanism. Can you wrap up page 10 to 14 in a few minutes, please? We've also amended Section 29DJ. The new mechanism will come into operation on the 25th of October 2023, and it is replacing the regional refund mechanism. Therefore, we're amending Section 29DJ, subsection 1A, stating that the original refund mechanism is only applicable for transactions that happen between 19th of October 2022 to 24th of October 2023. We have made some amendments to the English version of the bill. The original Section 29DJ subsection 5 has moved to the previous Section 29DHA. Therefore, we have just made an amendment to the punctuation marks in the English version. And we are also repealing the interpretation of specified scheme as well as subsection 6 to 8 under Section 29DJ because they have been moved to Section 29DHA. That's all for today's meeting. Let's carry on with the clause-by-clause examination in the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 8th of December from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's a Friday. Thanks for attending the meeting today. Meeting adjourned.